Hey guys, so Mr. Nubsy here got neutered today. You can see his poor little shaved leg. He had a bandage on there when I brought him home a little bit ago. I don't know what happened to it. He got it off already. But he seems to be doing just fine. He's a little dopey, but he's just kind of been doing his thing since I brought him home. First thing he did, of course, was eat. Poor thing. They just don't understand when you get up in the morning and you don't give them their treats at chore time. Like, you know, that's the routine. But now that that's over, it can all be back to life as usual for them. So now that cold weather is here and sunlight is low, our egg numbers are down a bit. You can see right there, only 6 in this coop. Now a couple chickens have started laying in my scrappy coop, so I gotta go check that one too. Hey guys, so I'm just out here doing my periodic swapping of the SD cards on the cameras. Today I had Bible study, like I usually do most weeks, and afterwards I went to the commissary at Redstone because it's kind of near there to get some coffee. There's certain Keurig K-Cups that I like, the only ones I like, and the commissary is the only store that carries them. So at some point, I have a feeling the commissary will stop carrying them, and when they do, I won't be using the Keurig anymore. So went by there, got my coffee, and as I was leaving, the commissary has baggers, and they bag your groceries. They walk out with you, and they put your groceries in your vehicle, and they do it for tips. That's how they make their money. Now there's one particular bagger who works at the Redstone Arsenal commissary who I adore her. The first time I met her, she did my groceries for me. Alrighty, so battery died. So I collected the SD cards, went in the house, changed out the battery, cleared off the SD cards. Now I'm putting them back in the cameras. So I mentioned that I went to the commissary to get coffee and how they have baggers that work there. Now when we used to live on Redstone Arsenal, I shopped at the commissary quite a bit. And I noticed, now I'm a truck girl, so I noticed these. There was this big, old, solid truck that was parked in the commissary parking lot all the time. So it was pretty obvious that it belonged to somebody who worked there. Well, one day, there was this one particular bagger who I had never met before, but I'd seen her there, you know, I knew she worked there. Well, she was my bagger that day. And let me tell you, that bagger was a very interesting lady. She was an older lady, and she was actually German. Spoke perfectly fine English. She'd obviously been in the United States for many, many years, but she had that very subtle German accent. And as we were walking out to my truck to take the groceries out there, we kind of chatted a little bit and found out that it was actually the anniversary of her husband passing away. And she told me about how in the morning he would get up before she would, and he would fix her a cup of coffee and set it on the nightstand for her, and how much she missed that. And I was struck because at that time, Mr. Smith was the early riser in our house. And do you know what he did? He would fix my coffee and set it on the nightstand. I would wake up almost every morning to the smell of hot coffee because it was 2 feet from my head every morning. And I told her that. And she says, "Oh, you hang on to him. That's a good one." It was precious, absolutely precious. And come to find out, that great big old truck that was out there in the parking lot every day, it was her truck. It used to belong to her husband, and that's what she drove because it was his truck. It was just such a moving little conversation that we had. And the other thing that struck me about her was how much she reminded me of my Grandma Ingalls. Now, her German accent was very, very subtle, and I've mentioned before, I come from German heritage. My grandmother wasn't born in Germany or anything like that. It was a couple generations back. But the area in the Midwest where my grandmother came from is very heavily German. And there were certain words that she would say that she said exactly like my grandmother. And having that conversation with her and just listening to her talk about her husband and everything, man, it made me miss my grandma because she just reminded me of her so much. She was a widow. My grandmother too was a widow. She was a young widow. My grandfather, my papi, died when I was only about 2 years old. I do have a couple memories of him. Not very many though, because I was so young. But my grandmother never remarried, and she was very independent. She lived out in the country, and she gardened, and she just took care of things. And I don't know, that lady just reminded me of her.